They filmed the murders, and one kept it as trophy and the other made it viral. 2 young lives ended in the most twisted and terrifying ways imaginable. A boy driven by obsession, another by a disturbing sense of purpose. And the most chilling part? They documented it all. What drove them to commit such horrifying acts, and why did they want the world to see it? Stay with me, because this story only gets darker. Someone had posted a picture of a dead girl. And not just any girl. It looked exactly like Instagram popular Bianca Devins. It was July 14th, 2019. Not a regular morning. People were panicking, thinking Bianca might be dead. And it wasn't just talk, and there was an actual picture floating around. Her face pale, blood visible. But how could that be? Bianca had just been out the night before, heading to a concert, texting her mom she'd be home soon. Everyone thought it must be some prank, some new trend. After all, in online circles, it wasn't unusual for people to fake dramatic stories for attention. But then something happened that made everyone realize it wasn't a joke. While scrolling through Discord, people that same haunting image, deciding it looked real enough to dial 911. Utica police started getting flooded with calls from people. When cops showed up at Bianca's house, no one had heard from her. Her sister answered confused, calling for their mom. The officers didn't show the photo, but they had one question that chilled everyone to the bone. Can you get in touch with Bianca? Her mom, Kim, had last seen her before she left for the city. Bianca was excited then. Fresh out of high school, finally free, off to see a concert with friends. Nothing seemed off. No signs of trouble. So why weren't they able to reach her now? Where had she gone? And why was Bianca's name suddenly blowing up all over Twitter? It had even leaked onto Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, with some users making memes out of it, twisting something horrific into something viral. Why? She was what the internet calls an e-girl, a social media chameleon who could be whoever she wanted. She had multiple Instagram accounts, one for family, another for friends, and yet another edgier one reserved for her online world. Apart from that, Discord, Instagram, Tumblr, she ruled them all. But behind the perfectly curated posts, there was something darker. Since she was 9, Bianca struggled with separation anxiety, clinging to her mom. At 16, she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. That's why she made her entire life online, an entire persona, surrounded by thousands who adored her. Just like that, someone had followed her, obsessed over her, watched every move she made, and that person was there the night she vanished. The night before, Bianca went to that concert in New York City. But she didn't go alone. She was with someone she met online. And that person wasn't just another follower, rather someone who wanted her attention all to himself. Meet Brandon Clark. He met Bianca online and charmed his way into her world. But that night, everything changed when Brandon himself picked up the phone and dialed 911. The victim is Bianca Devins, he said in a calm voice, as if it was already done and there was nothing left to say. And then came the threat. He was going to kill himself, too. The police scrambled to track him, pinging his phone, trying to keep him talking. And when they finally found him, it was on a dead-end road, eerily close to Bianca's house. His car was parked there, waiting. Knife in hand, blood already running down his arms. Brandon refused to drop the weapon. Instead, he slashed himself this time, then reached for his phone. One last selfie, one last post, in which he captioned, "Ashes to ashes." When the police finally made it to him under a tarp by his car, they found a body. It was none other than Bianca's. The question wasn't who did it, it was Brandon for sure. The question was, how did it come to this? How did Bianca end up in that car at the mercy of a man everyone thought she could trust? To understand that, you have to rewind. Apart from Instagram, she moved through anonymous chaotic spaces, Forshan, Discord, the places most people avoid. And in those spaces, she attracted followers who were not just fans, rather orbiters, like men who hovered around her, feeding off her attention, desperate to be in her orbit, even if from a distance. And one of those orbiters was Brandon Clark. He wasn't some obvious danger, there were no flashing signs, and he was the kind of guy who flew under the radar. The kind of guy you wouldn't even remember at a party. It started with a message sprayed in blood-red paint, "May you never forget me." That's what caught the investigators' eyes first. Not the body, not even the gruesome scene. Naturally, they dug deeper. The message wasn't random. Turns out it was straight out of a dark, violent Japanese comic series called Goodnight Pun Pun, a twisted tale, something like Romeo and Juliet, if it had been written by someone who saw love as destruction. And guess what? Brandon Clark and Bianca Devins used to read it together. So was Clark seeing himself as some tragic, doomed lover? Was this all part of some sick romantic fantasy? But why is that? Apart from all those, when police first arrived at the scene, it wasn't filled with silence. A Bluetooth speaker was still playing on loop with same song over and over. They traced it back to Clark's phone, which he'd programmed to blast Test Drive by Joy. If you aren't familiar with this song, it's again a track about someone who's hopelessly in love, far more invested than the other person. Seems like he'd choreographed the whole night, but why set a soundtrack to murder? That question led investigators somewhere else entirely, straight into Bianca's social media accounts. And that's when they discovered Bianca and Brandon weren't alone that night. Turns out there was someone else, a new name, Alex. So could Alex be the real killer and Clark was just a helpless mourning lover? Basically, it was Bianca who had invited him to the concert, messaging privately on Discord. What's striking was that she even mentioned she was nervous Brandon might get jealous. When the cops reached out to Alex, he told investigators about Brandon's cold demeanor, how he didn't want Alex there. Then came the text Bianca sent Alex after the concert. "I think he saw me kiss you." And that one line flipped everything. Was this all about that kiss? Was this a crime of passion spiraling out of control? And just when they thought they'd pieced together the motive, Clark dropped another bomb. As the night bled into dawn, Clark posted something bone-chilling. A photo of the New York State Thruway with a caption, "Here comes hell. It's redemption." What did that even mean? Redemption for what? Want to know? Just subscribe to this channel because we are going to reveal it soon. When they cracked into Clark's phone, they weren't ready for what popped up, because the next thing they found was a video. Brandon had filmed himself murdering Bianca. Every second, every move, planned, staged, and deliberate. In the footage, Bianca's asleep in the backseat, and Clark calmly fixes his phone to the dashboard, checks the angle, reaches into the back, and grabs a knife he'd hidden. Then he wakes her up casually, and in a cold voice he starts talking about her kiss with Alex. She apologizes and says she wanted to go home. Then, without warning, he lunges. It wasn't heat-of-the-moment rage. It wasn't passion. It was cold, calculated murder. And yet the most disturbing part wasn't even the video. Because when they kept digging through Clark's phone, they stumbled on something even darker, a checklist, or a literal to-do list. It was typed 2 days before the murder, and step by step, item by item, as if planning a weekend project. Things like setup, speaker, and last song, stage crime scene, even specific searches, how to choke someone, how to cut the carotid artery. Everything was down to the smallest detail, so clearly this wasn't a guy who lost control. From the first sight, he developed feelings for Bianca. But Bianca rejected his proposal and showed interest in Alex. As a result, Clark couldn't handle this rejection. But the final gut-punch realization, he didn't just want her dead. He wanted the world to watch. He wanted to be unforgettable. But if that's so, was it ever really about Bianca, or was it all about him? For the answer, we have to check out his trial. It had been 2 weeks since Bianca Devins' murder, and the courtroom was packed. Her family, her friends, all dressed in pink, her favorite color, sitting stone-faced, waiting. The doors creaked open and Brandon Clark shuffled in orange jumpsuit. His lawyers floated some excuse, extreme emotional disturbance. But no one in that room was buying it. Not the prosecutors, not Bianca's shattered family. And that's when the real nightmare began. Bianca's murder didn't end at the crime scene. Brandon Clark had made sure of that. He posted the images online, parading her death for the world to see. The pictures spread like a virus and no one could stop them. The reason was something far more twisted. A community hidden in plain sight was cheering Brandon Clark on. They called themselves incels. It's kind of a Gen Z slang, short for involuntary celibates, men who believed the world owed them women like Bianca. To them, Bianca wasn't a daughter, a sister, or a person. She was an enemy. And when Clark killed her, they celebrated him like a hero. Clark never called himself an incel, but that didn't matter. His crime was exactly the kind of violence these dark corners of the internet fantasized about. And they weren't just talking. Authorities linked dozens of mass murders to this ideology. So much so it was now being watched like a ticking bomb. Bianca's friends noticed something chilling in these forums after she died. Posts wondering who'd be next. And then, just when it seemed like the horror couldn't get worse, Brandon Clark flipped the script again. As his trial loomed, the family braced themselves. There was talk the video of Bianca's murder might be shown in court. But suddenly, Clark pled guilty. He said he wanted to spare the family the pain. It almost sounded like remorse. But months later, he changed his mind. He wanted a trial after all. What made him switch again? Simple. Word had gotten out. Production companies, media outlets were circling Bianca's story. So he wanted back in. He wanted to control the narrative, get his moment. For him, the trial wasn't justice, it was a stage. But Clark wasn't done playing games yet, because when he took the stand, he pointed the finger at someone unexpected, someone you'd never guess. He blamed his own lawyer. He claimed he'd been pressured, left in the dark, tricked into pleading guilty. Now even his attorney was against him. He fired back, laying out every visit, every meeting, every hour spent walking Clark through the process. The records also proved it. And it turned out that it was Clark only who had been pulling the strings the whole time. Every move, every reversal, every plea, just another power play designed to keep Bianca's family trapped in his orbit. So what do you think? Was it ever really about Bianca, or was it always about control, even long after she was gone? Brandon Clark thought he could outsmart the system, but the moment he opened his mouth in court, everything crumbled. One moment he claimed he knew better than his own lawyer, and the next moment he got ripped apart in seconds. But if Clark couldn't wiggle out of his guilty plea, what would come next? March 16, 2021. The day the court finally decided Clark's fate, 2 years since Bianca's murder. This time, Clark came up with a quiet apology, with tears and self-hatred. But was it real? The judge remained stone-cold and ordered for maximum sentence, 25 years to life. So was that justice? Not exactly, because after 25 years, Clark could be free for parole. He'll still be in his late 40s. Meanwhile, Bianca will never get another chance at life. But Bianca's family had one more fight. What if they could make sure no other family had to go through what they did? What if they could stop the violence from spreading even after death? And that's when Bianca's Law was born. Teaming up with politicians, they drafted a bill that would force social media companies to take responsibility for violent, graphic content shared on their platforms. Bianca's death photos had been weaponized online, but with this law, they hoped to slam the door shut on that happening again. But will a law be enough to erase the scars? And also, if the system gave Clark the possibility of parole? If social media continues to profit off tragedy? If another family stands where Bianca's family stood? Will justice ever really exist? But don't think it was a sole and exceptional case where a Gen Z became so desperate, so lethal, so hungry for power and attention, and acted in such a gruesome way. Even though it was insane, the main motive was still a bit familiar. While the next one? You won't even believe it until you see it yourself. It was 7:15 in the morning when a turkey hunter stumbled upon the scene deep in the Utah woods. A teenage girl was hanging from a tree, lifeless, at Payson Canyon, the rope still tight around her neck. No car nearby. No signs of how she even got there. No note, except one chilling message scribbled in plain sight. My name is Jachandra Brown, and I hated my life. Goodbye, world. Watch the video. It's on my phone. The phone was there too, completely dead. But what was on that phone? And why did just a 16-year-old girl end up alone in the middle of nowhere? Moreover, how did no one see it coming? Before detectives could piece it together, someone walked straight into their crime scene, wearing a bright orange shirt, almost like he wanted to be noticed. His name was Tyrell Przybisian. He called himself a stupid kid who made a huge mistake. But what came out of his mouth next made the officers' stomachs drop. He didn't just know about Chandra's death, he even filmed it for 10 minutes straight with no panic or no attempt to stop it. He just stood there watching and recording. But why did he do nothing? Was it just a sick mistake or something he planned all along? Turns out Tyrell wasn't some random passerby. He had wormed his way into Jachandra's life, slowly, carefully. He made her feel like she had no one else, like the world she left behind in Idaho didn't matter anymore. In his twisted mind, he believed he wasn't hurting her, he was helping her do what she wanted. But the truth was, he pushed her right to that edge, manipulatively. Rather, without Tyrell, Jachandra might still be alive. But how did a girl like Jachandra, so full of life, end up here in the first place? If you had met Jachandra Brown a year earlier, you never would have guessed she was struggling. Raised in Twin Falls, Idaho, she was that bright, bubbly kid everyone loved. A volleyball star, a cheerleader, an adventure junkie, the kind of person who made every room lighter. Her mom called her Jelly Bean. Her friends called her the glue that held them all together. But in 2016, everything shifted. Her family moved her from Idaho to Spanish Fork, Utah. New town. There she got new school and new people. The move was supposed to bring the family closer, but for Jachandra, it felt like everything familiar had been ripped away. At first, she seemed fine, made new friends, smiled the same way. But underneath, she wasn't as happy anymore. She got frustrated fast. Her mom noticed it and took her to a doctor. That's when they prescribed her antidepressants. But no one realized how much she missed Idaho, how much she missed the people who knew her best. By the time she moved to Utah, Chandra had already started self-harming. Experts later said it was classic depression. But why didn't anyone see the signs sooner? Because even as Jachandra slipped deeper into isolation, one person did see it. It was Tyrell. And he used it. He made her feel like no one else cared, like there was only one way out. After Tyrell's confession, detectives got hold of Jachandra's phone. And when they finally powered it back on, what they found wasn't just the video. There was something else that Tyrell hadn't mentioned, and before we tell you what that is, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because that's what keeps us going. Jachandra Brown didn't come home that night, but she didn't even leave a text or a call. By morning, her mother knew something was wrong, and Chandra had been caught with weed. It was her second time, but her mom didn't yell. She just took away Chandra's phone and dropped her off at her Wendy's shift, expecting her back around 1:30 a.m. But Chandra never walked through that door again. So here did she go? Why didn't she call? And more importantly, who was she with? By sunrise, panic had set in and her mom called the cops thinking maybe Chandra ran away. And finally the police didn't find her, but a turkey hunter did. Deep in the woods, far from the roads and homes, her body hung from a tree branch. At first glance, it looked like a simple suicide. But the ground beneath her told a different story. 2 grocery bags lay right there in the dirt. Inside, there's a crumpled receipt what caught an officer's eye. It wasn't just any receipt, it had a name on it, Tyrell Przybysien. What was purchased was a rope, bought with his debit card. But why would Tyrell's name be on the receipt at the scene of Chandra's death? That's when detectives jumped in, and before they could track Tyrell down, he found them. Calmly walking up to the scene, he told them he came back to make sure Chandra was dead. Why would any sane person ever say something like that? Was this some kind of confession or something darker? No wonder they took him in immediately. He talked casually at first. He was a quiet kid but smart, not even dumb. Plus he was an athletic, always ahead in school. But afterward his mom admitted that she had seen something change in him. A shadow creeping in, thoughts turning darker. Could it be depression? Hard to say, as there was no diagnosis. When asked Chandra's friends, they said that she wasn't dating Tyrell. She simply thought she could help him and fix him. And then detectives found the one thing that flipped the case on its head. A spare phone at the scene, and there was this 10-minute disturbing video of Jachandra's final moments. But what was Tyrell's motive? Why would Tyrell stand by recording as Jachandra died? The answers only led to more questions. And as the investigation dug deeper into Tyrell's life, his past, and what really happened in those woods, they uncovered a chilling truth. This wasn't just a case of a troubled teen and a bad influence. It was something much darker, something that would leave everyone asking, who really pushed Jachandra over the edge? And how far can one person go before someone else breaks? Turns out Jachandra wasn't alone that night. She was with Tyrell. The cops asked how well he knew Jachandra. He shrugged it off, said they weren't exactly close, just acquaintances. But over the next 5 hours, a twisted story started to unravel. Tyrell told them about a text Jachandra sent. "Let's do this tonight." What exactly did this mean? Tyrell and Jachandra had been texting for weeks, and they were basically talking about how to die. But this wasn't just on a conversation level. Tyrell came prepared. Security cameras showed him casually walking into a store, buying 20 feet of nylon rope. The receipt matched exactly what they found wrapped around Jachandra's neck in the canyon. He admitted he'd driven her up there. He also admitted he stood there while she tied the noose. But when detectives asked him if he tried to stop her, Tyrell said no, not even once. So was it a suicide pact? He tried to sell it that way. Two teens lost and broken, making a tragic decision together. But there was one problem. Tyrell never intended to die. Then what exactly was his plan? That's when came the message that cracked the case wide open. In the middle of combing through Tyrell's phone, detectives found a text he'd sent to a friend weeks earlier, where he'd asked, "What would you do if a friend wanted to kill themselves?" The friend gave the obvious answer, "I'd talk them out of it." Tyrell's reply was like, "I'd help them do it." That's when it stopped looking like a sad suicide story and started looking a whole lot like murder. But here's the catch. Utah had no law against assisted suicide at the time. If they wanted to charge Tyrell, it had to be murder or manslaughter, or nothing at all. But how do you prove murder when the victim left a suicide note saying, "This was all my decision"? And Tyrell wasn't done talking. What he said next made the prosecutor's blood run cold. After the job was done, Tyrell had gone back to the scene, not to help, not to mourn, but to double-check that Jachandra was dead and to collect the rope. He wanted to keep it like a trophy, and that wasn't all. In his text, Tyrell casually talked about mutilating Jachandra's body, cutting off her head, disposing of her remains, disturbing at its peak. But was this just teenage edginess, a twisted joke? Is it a result of some kind of deep-seated trauma? But here's where it gets even more disturbing. Jachandra's friends started speaking up. They said she was changing after she met Tyrell. She was more withdrawn, more depressed, like the light had gone out. Psychiatric experts weighed in. Suicide is the leading cause of death for teenage girls worldwide. Tyrell had found someone fragile, someone already standing near the edge, and instead of pulling her back, he whispered, "Jump!" But could prosecutors convince a jury about it? All they had to do was let Tyrell speak for himself. The mountain of texts painted the picture. Tyrell plotting, suggesting ways to die, fantasizing about the aftermath. In one message, he even said, "It's like getting away with murder." That line sealed it. 5 days after Jachandra's death, Tyrell Prebician was charged with first-degree murder. But Tyrell never denied what he did. He told his lawyers flat out, "I feel like I did murder. That was my plan." Yet even with that confession, one question lingered. What was his point? Why didn't he try to deny it, or run away at least, like other killers? Rather, Tyrell was busy bragging, calling up friends, sending out letters, talking about how he planned to get a noose tattooed all down his arm. He even asked someone to set up an Instagram account. He wanted the media attention and wanted to cash in on his own infamy. Sounds like Tyrell is less of a human and more of an android robot that has zero moral compass and ethics. And just when you thought it couldn't get darker, he name-dropped someone else, Michelle Carter. Basically, she was the girl who told her friend to kill himself. Tyrell's letters carried instructions and warnings like a handbook. He told his friends not to talk to the cops and told them flat out, "Use your right to remain silent. Don't testify." That's when prosecutors started connecting dots. Witness tampering, a brand new charge slapped onto Tyrell's case. Suddenly, the murder trial they were prepping for took a sharp left turn. Tyrell, who had been all set to stand trial, now wanted to talk plea deals. But why back down after all the bravado? Because that one extra charge, that one letter, changed everything. It was no longer just about murder. It was about control, manipulation, and how far he'd go to dodge responsibility. The deal? Tyrell pled guilty to a lesser charge, child abuse homicide, with no more trial and 5 years to life sentence. Here the case could be closed, but that's when came another twist again. Utah lawmakers stepped in and introduced a new law. This is totally surprising. Now, as per the law, assisting someone in taking their life, even giving them the means or the push, counted as manslaughter. So suddenly what Tyrell did wasn't just morally wrong, it was criminal, codified and permanent. But here comes the question. We know she have been saved, but what made Tyrell such a monster? What poison changed him like this? Who really failed both Jachandra Brown and Tyrell? And finally, who's next? And tell us in the comments section. And if you are not disturbed yet, embrace yourself for the next true crime case, which is truly nauseating and traumatic for you, where a man offered other men her wife's body to assault and rape as much as they want, while he filmed everything. But why? The answer is waiting in this video. Subscribe to the channel for more. See you soon.